Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. Today I have a replay from you submitted by, you may remember him, although you'd have to stretch your memory pretty far back, Mr. Crow. A Croatian, as the name might suggest, World of Tanks player. And you might remember him as being something of a wizard when it comes to playing light tanks. This is probably also the reason why we haven't seen anything from him in some time, because he's pretty much given up playing light tanks with the introduction of armoured cars, and well, who can really blame him? So I probably should have been surprised, although I wasn't really, to see that this was not a light tank replay. This is the Japanese Tier 6 medium tank, the Type 4 Chito. But that's not the whole story, as will become plainly obvious the second this match starts, and he starts moving, because this is a 100% stock Type 4 Chito. Look at this thing go. He might actually manage at some point to go faster than 20 kilometers per hour. Although right now, he'd probably be overtaken by a tortoise or a doom turtle. Oh my god, this thing is terrible when it's stock. I mean, there's bad, there's really, really bad, and then there's the stock Type 4. When people tell tales of stock tank grinds in World of Tanks, they usually refer to the infamous, legendarily bad VK3001P. And it is true that if you don't have the free XP to skip the modules, grinding that thing stock is an experience about as enjoyable as having your teeth pulled without anaesthetic. But you could make a convincing argument that the Type 4 Chito is just as bad. The stock 300 horsepower engine has a technical speed limit of 45 kilometers per hour, but the only time you're even going to approach those kind of speeds are in circumstances like this, when you're driving downhill, and preferably you also have a tailwind. In all other circumstances, the only way this tank is even going to approach 20 kilometers per hour is if half the crew get out and push. It has a power to weight ratio with the stock engine of less than 10 horsepower per ton. I don't really know what it is that slows this tank down, because it's certainly not the armour. It has a maximum of 75mm, and that's only at the front. Everywhere else, it's a mere 35mm. I can only assume that it's this massive 75mm gun that slows the tank down, because it does weigh 1.5 tons all by itself. And it's probably the best thing about the tank, but it's still not that good. Have a look at the ammunition selection at the bottom of the screen. Tell me, where's the premium ammunition? Because it looks like he's got armour piercing, and high explosive. Where's the heat? Where's the APCR? Well, that middle armour piercing is the premium ammunition. And it's shit. With the stock gun, which this is, it has 155mm of penetration, with gold ammo. And there's no gun depression. I mean, look at this. The ironic thing is, and it's actually ironic on a number of levels, but when you get the upgraded turret, which this is not, you actually get 10 degrees of gun depression, which is fantastic, not just by Japanese tank standards, but by anybody's standards. Of course, that upgraded turret weighs more, has the same shitty 360 meter view range, and wait for it, has less armour. Despite weighing more. You couldn't make this shit up. How do you do that? How do you manage to make a turret that weighs 0.5 ton more and has less side armour, with the same turret rotation speed and the same shitty view range? It beggars belief. And remember, that's what you have to look forward to when you upgrade the turret on this thing. Even upgrading the engine for an extra 100 horsepower doesn't really add that much to the mobility of, or lack of mobility of this tank. I mean, it's painfully bad when stock. It becomes just bad when it's upgraded. If you take a look at the World of Tanks wiki page entry on this tank, and you look at the pros and cons section down at the bottom, the pros all refer to upgraded modules on this tank. The upgraded gun, which handles pretty well and has rather good accuracy, but this is not the upgraded gun. The excellent gun depression with the upgraded turret, but this is not the upgraded turret. Decent damage per minute with a high rate of fire, with the upgraded gun. This is not the upgraded gun. So there's basically nothing at all that's good about a stock Type 4 Cheeto. Everything about this tank sucks. So what I want you to do here is to try to just bear in mind how criminally bad this tank is when you watch what happens next. The team are having their arses handed to them, of course. They've claimed 3 kills and lost 7 tanks of their own. Mr. Crow hasn't really moved very far at all from his start point, which, well, you can't do in this tank. Oh yes, of course. As you just saw when he took 236 damage in a single hit from artillery, if you have a tank that has the combination of extraordinarily bad armour and notoriously shitty mobility, then you are basically also artillery's bitch. And we all know how much fun that can be, don't we, boys and girls? Now it's at this point where things really start to take a slight turn for the worse. I mean, the team are losing 4 kills to 8, and the sharks are circling in the water. T-50-2 comes rushing in, thinks he's got him, and, well, if he'd been in an armoured car he would have had him, but he's not, so one shot takes his tracks off and he's dead meat. Although not before he managed to do the same thing to Mr. Crow, although losing your tracks in the Type 4 Cheeto when it's stock only marginally reduces your mobility. His platoon mate in the Type 64 comes to the rescue, and between the two of them, they see off that rather determined enemy push. Despite that brutally efficient slaughter of enemy tanks, and despite artillery continuing, because they know a good thing when they see one, to attempt to make Mr. Crow his bitch, it hasn't really affected the scores too much, because they're still trailing by 2 kills. Did that T1 just fire high explosive? Even the T1 knows how bad. Even the T1 knows how bad the Cheeto's armour is, although he should have fired anywhere other than the front of the turret and he would have probably done a lot of damage. Now the problem here for Mr. Crow is that yes, he can hide behind the wreck of the T-50, but if he does that, the only thing that's going to stop the enemy artillery from bitch slapping him into the next battle is the fact that the Type 64 is an even more inviting target for artillery, since it's not just an extremely thinly armoured, but also an open-topped light tank, although he has managed to kill the T1 heavy and also the T6 medium, challenging it from the top of the hill, and with that, despite the fact that artillery is continuing to try to make him their bitch, he has earned himself a bit of a breathing space. Now naturally the next thing that he wants to do is to back up his 3 surviving teammates, and with the enemy M10 over there caught in a sandwich between a T6 medium, an Excelsior and an M3 Lee, you'd think that they'd have a fairly good chance of killing the M10 and evening up the scores. Although so far, oh finally he managed to actually score a hit. Yeah, surely they've got the M10. In fact, he's got the M10. Pretty good rate of fire on this 75mm gun, I will give it that much credit. That, by the way, is his top gun. I know, hard to believe in this tank, but miracles do happen. A broken clock tells the right time twice a day and all that. Now where did that enemy Matilda go? Because he was spotted over there, not too... oh, hello. Well, it's not the Matilda, but it'll do. Looks like the M3 Lee has managed to find the Stug by virtue of almost driving into it, and the Matilda is still out there somewhere because he's just killed the Excelsior. Oh, hello. There he is. Matilda spotted just in time for the enemy M44 to rack up his 4th kill by taking out the T6, and I thought at this point, despite getting in the opening shots, that Mr. Crow was finished, because that is a Matilda, and it may just be tier 4, but with the Mark 10B version of the 2-pounder gun with a Little John adapter, it has 121mm of penetration, but that guy did not have the Mark 10B version of the 2-pounder gun, so he only had 78mm penetration, which technically is 3mm more than you need to defeat the frontal armour at its strongest on the Type 4, but for once, RNGesus was in a good mood, and Mr. Crow's gotten away with it. Also, luckily, being able to rush downhill at the end of that engagement and avoid getting bitch slapped by artillery again. Unfortunately for the M3 Lee over there, now he has to climb the ridge on the opposite hill before he can provide any kind of assistance to the M3 Lee, and well, you've seen how slow this thing is on the flat, and now you can see how slow it is when trying to climb a hill, so a couple of days late and a couple of dollars short. Oh, look at that terrible gun depression. Luckily, he does have a better rate of fire than even a Stug 4 with a 75mm gun, but now he's got to tuck his ass into this extremely convenient gap in the rocks there in order to shelter from the inevitable artillery counterfire. Now that he's reasonably sure he's no longer spotted, although artillery continues to try, It's time to relocate. 2 enemies. He's in one of the worst, in fact a fairly strong contender for the title of worst tank in the game. He's got no health left. He's facing a tank destroyer, a very, very sneaky tank destroyer, that's a Stug 3, and artillery. Not the 2 most obvious of opponents, both of which you have to count on being hidden in a bush, waiting for him to blunder into their field of fire, both of whom can easily one-shot kill him, and both of whom are all but guaranteed to see him coming before he sees them, unless he catches them doing something really stupid, or he just gets extremely lucky and catches them in the process of moving from cover to cover across open ground. But you'd be foolish to count on that. It's a tank destroyer and artillery. In 9 out of 10 cases, they're going to be camping bush like a pair of bosses, and you're going to have to come to them. And that's probably going to get you killed. So what he's trying to do, and I'm pretty sure he's basing his tactics here on the likelihood that those 2 guys are going to be camping bush, and he's trying to figure out where they're going to be camping bush from and work out the best possible route in this huge, obvious and ungainly medium tank. The best route to work his way around the available cover in order to, well, try to see them before they see him. Now this is not going to be easy. He does have 6th sense, which is why he's jockeying around the corner of the fortifications here. He knows that if the 6th sense goes off, he's been spotted. And that tells him, more or less, gives him a fairly good idea of where he can expect to have been spotted from. But 6th sense did not go off, so he's now reasonably sure that there's nobody waiting to snipe at him from the top of the hill in the middle of the map there. But now he's got to work his way around to try to get closer without being spotted and killed to the last reported location of the enemy. And there's not a huge amount of concealment here. It's very flat, very open ground, but he's making the most of whatever concealment there is. This must have been so tense. I was going to say I'd love to have seen this happening live. You can probably still catch the video on demand on his Twitch channel. I might have to go and watch that after I've finished recording this video. Look at the lack of cover here. I mean, how confident would you be feeling if you were in this situation? Probably not very. But so far, not spotted. I mean, he's making the absolute most out of the little cover that is available. But the odds are definitely not in his favour. Still not spotted by anyone. So that tells him something. Of course, if they've decided to go for his base, he is in the shit, because there's no way he's going to make it back in time. Oh, let's hope that hasn't happened. I mean, you've seen how slow this thing is. Look at how slowly it turns. It's not just the speed. The manoeuvrability is shit as well. Still not spotted, and oh shit, there we go. Worst possible thing to happen under the circumstances. His base is being capped, and he's right at the other end of the map. Shit, there's the Stug. Oh, it's pointing the wrong way. Thank God for a downhill slope. He's actually able to get some mobility going. He's managed to blow the Stug's tracks off, and he's got him. Trying to make the most of his momentum, keep moving, because we now know that the M44 is in the cap circle. It's too late to go for the enemy cap. How can this sluggish piece of shit possibly make it to the cap circle in time to do anything about the M44 capping his base out from underneath him? Worst possible situation. Couldn't have happened at a worst possible time, right when he was at the enemy cap, but not after he'd made it into the enemy cap, which would have been great. Well, it would have been great assuming he'd managed to kill the Stug before he got into the cap, and before the M44 had started capping. Although even that probably wouldn't have been as good as you might think, because the M44, unlike the Type 4 Cheeto, is an extremely fast artillery, and could easily have made it back to a hilltop bush where he could not only see, Mr. Crow's tank, but also finish him off while he was sitting in an open cap circle. So Mr. Crow doesn't really have any other choice than to try to take the flattest possible route back, not to the cap circle, but to a spot where he can possibly see the cap circle. He's got seconds to take the shot. He still hasn't seen the... There he is! With 1 second to go, he's found the M44. So naturally, his shot misses. You've got to be kidding. Oh my god, what a way to lose. 9 kills in a piece of shit like this, and it's still just not enough. We are in fact lucky enough, although I'm not sure lucky is the right word, to be able to see Mr. Crow's reaction when this actually happened, because of course one of his viewers clipped it on Twitch.
Bra. Još jednom, ajde napratiš. Nisi.
Yeah, I think we can all appreciate how he feels. Still, I think you'll agree that anybody who's capable of getting that kind of result, even though it was a defeat in a tank as atrociously bad as a stock Type 4 Cheeto, is probably worth your attention, and somebody you might want to think about following on Twitch. Mr. Crow, you have my sympathies, and probably the sympathies of everybody watching this video too, but, well, you know, at the same time, the M44 played a good game. Neither of you really deserved to lose, although the M44 had the massive advantage of not being in a Type 4 Cheeto. So please accept my sympathies. It's the very least that I could do. Anyway, I hope you all, well, I was going to say enjoyed enjoyed this video, but that doesn't really seem appropriate either. Anyway, you know, make of it what you will, because that's it for today. Mr. Crow, my sympathies. Everyone else, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.